The Hawkeyes have the opportunity, of course, to finish with a 10-win season, and depending on results elsewhere, possibly get to Indianapolis for a Big Ten championship game. This is our Hawkeyes live edition here each and every week at the Voice of College Football, Tuesday night at 4:30 Central Time with Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So before we do anything else and talk Iowa and Nebraska, we encourage you to head on over to Hawkeye from the Storm. Subscribe there. Depending on where you are watching this, we're simulcasting on the main channel, the Nebraska channel, and the Iowa channel. Please subscribe where you are a fan, but also if you're just supporting the work that we do here at the Voice of College Football, the Iowa channel is certainly a priority. So please give us a sub there. Corey, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you, Mark?
I'm good.
It's another day, another dollar. I'm wearing red here, not in tribute to the Go Big Red fandom, but since Greg's not here, I kind of stole the show from him early on yesterday during our Nebraska Live. He's not here yet with us today. If he does show up, I'll go change shirts. But I've got red on just to give some support to Nebraska fans. I know they've had a rough season, rough start to the week with the news about Adrian Martinez. So I'm throwing him a bone, Mark.
Very nice. And you did that intentionally?
No.
Okay.
But I thought about it later, and I thought, I'll throw him a bone, an unintentional bone.
Well, Corey had to sit through an entire hour last night with seeing his name and all the banners and everything in red. Yep. So that's what happens when we... And I got to say, as I mentioned last night, I enjoy these conversations when, because of the cross-pollination of all the different channels that we have, when these matchups take place, that I can have our contributors from the various platforms collaborate. And it's fun for me just to kick back and listen to you guys dig a little bit deeper into the matchup than I'm capable of doing, which I shouldn't let on, because I don't know how many people tell me each day, and this is very flattering and very nice, that I know everything about college football. But of course, that is just a ridiculous impossibility. So,
well, Mark, I think it's clear that Iowa fans have embraced you, and Nebraska fans have embraced you for a much longer period of time than Iowa fans. So you're kind of combining two very passionate fan bases. This is a big week for all of us. Right. I mean, this is a big week. It's the last week of the season, regular season. You mentioned at the top of the show that Iowa does have an opportunity to win the West. And we've talked about sort of just the anticipation, the vigor with some of these fans. And I don't want to say that it's totally, the flame is totally burned out. But I don't know. There's still a good chance. I mean, it's not great. I say good. That's relatively speaking, of winning the West. I mean, all they need to win the game Friday, and then all you need is for Minnesota to win. Now, that may seem like a tall order. I think it's not. I don't think it's going to happen. I certainly wouldn't place my bet on it. Not that I would bet on any game, but there is a chance, a decent chance. It's not like Minnesota that needs three different things to happen for them to win the division. So, I don't know where the excitement will be if Wisconsin loses. Say Iowa does win on Friday, Mark. And Wisconsin loses on Saturday. Yeah, I mean, Iowa's not going to the playoff, but to go back to Indy, I mean, it's almost like it's so weird, because I understand my mind is telling myself that it's a possibility, but my heart is already kind of counting it out. And I think maybe I'm speaking for Iowa fans there. Like, nobody just feels like it's really a possibility. Felt like it kind of was, midway through that game on Saturday with Nebraska and Wisconsin. But, Nebraska never pulled ahead in that game. They could never stop the Wisconsin run. I said late in the game, I said to Don Patterson afterwards, I said, they got to, if they had scored that last touchdown, to me, they needed to go for two, because I didn't see them stopping Braylon Allen in that overtime if it went to overtime. And who knows, maybe they would have went for two and gotten it, but we'll never know. We found out later, of course, Adrian Martinez dealt with the shoulder injury for much of the second half, at least according to Frost, which was interesting because, I don't love Adrian Martinez as an Iowa guy, but he seems to be a tough kid. And again, he's dealt with a lot, not just physically, but sort of losing his job at times during his career, and certainly hasn't always had the support of his very passionate, fan base. So, it's sort of interesting to see where this headline goes this week with Smothers now at quarterback for Nebraska. I will find it interesting how Nebraska plans to deploy him. I mean, how many dropbacks and throws are going to give the kid, who I don't know how many throws he's gotten up to this point, but certainly not very many. Will they mix in the Hartberg kid? That's a possibility. It sounds like they're sort of slightly different types of players. I know Greg Peterson yesterday was talking about how Harburg's more of a pocket passer. So I would guess they'll stick with Smothers because that's kind of Frost's style to have those guys who are more dual threat. But Harburg's on the roster, so you never know. And certainly, as every coach will tell you, you're one play away at quarterback or any position. If you're the backup, you're one play away from being the starter. So it will be interesting to see what happens. I know if you want me to, Mark, I can kind of get into a couple things that Kirk talked about today during his press conference. Injuries. He did confirm Matt Hankins is definitely out this week. We assumed that. So that's disappointing, especially for a kid who he won't be back next year. So he won't play another Big Ten game in his career, barring some unforeseen thing. I think he's out of eligibility completely. So he'll be out. That's disappointing. Hopefully you get him back for a bowl game. I don't know. Again, I don't know the details on these injuries. Kirk's not really been too upfront about injuries this year, and that's his prerogative. But could he be back for the Big Ten title game if they make it? You get an extra long week, I guess, if you look at it from that perspective, from Friday to the following Saturday night. We'll see there. It sounds like Jack Kerner at free safety has a chance. Sounded like a good chance, but I think Kirk used the word iffy on a lot of these players. A little bit surprising and reassuring to hear that Mason Richmond does have a chance. I did not see him. He was not on the depth chart this week. But just the fact that Kirk says he has a chance is positive news. And if you could get him in a rotation with Jack Plum again at left tackle, I think that helps both players be more effective and certainly stamina-wise. And then there was a third guy. Who am I missing that's been out? Terry Roberts. That's who I'm missing. And that might be the biggest one for me after Kerner. Richmond would be nice to get back. Kerner's the obvious one. But if you can get Roberts back, I think you've got a clear top two at corner you got a clear top two anyways with Jamari Harris and Riley Moss, but boy, I think you'd love to be able to insert Terry Roberts and at least rotate him in with Jamari Harris, who's gotten burned a time or two. I guess if you're looking at just purely style of play with these two quarterbacks for Nebraska, if Harburg does play, this may be an opportunity for Frost, if Iowa's down two of their three top cornerbacks, to take some shots down the field to the outside with a guy like Harburg or maybe Smothers. So we'll see. Certainly would help if Iowa could get Roberts back, but that's the bad thing about a short prep week. And it's also the bad thing about, I don't know the rules on traveling anymore. If you're hurt, I know you have a certain number of guys who can travel, and certainly there's no rule that a guy who's injured cannot travel, but you have a certain limit of guys who can come to the game. So that's the downside of going on the road on a short week, is you're not going to you might not be able to see him in pregame warmups. You may have to take a shot and say, well, either we have him or we don't before you leave for Lincoln. So I guess those are all the storylines from Kirk today, and we'll see. Hopefully it's a good week of practice and rehab.
Iowa, Nebraska, as it typically is at the end of the Big Ten schedule on a Friday after Thanksgiving. We invite everyone in here on Hawkeyes Live to leave your comments and questions there in the live chat. We got Corey Bratta, as we always do, to cover Iowa football here at the Voice of College Football. Please join him on From the Hawkeye of the Storm. We hope to have Greg Peterson a little bit later from Husker Online from Rivals. To backtrack to the original topic, which was the mindset of the Iowa fan base leading into this game and the level of hope going into this game to make it through to Indianapolis, but first win this game, of course. I will say that, it's been quite a ride for a team that's on the brink of a 10-2 regular season, a bit of a roller coaster ride in regards to, okay, you start the season as an Iowa fan, and I've got to think that you're perceiving, okay, a run, serious run to a Big Ten Western Division championship or to be in serious contention, knowing that Wisconsin's going to be the chief rival most likely, and they've typically and have had Iowa's number. The season starts out great, dominant defense, opportunistic defense, as has been the calling card for a couple decades now. The team rises to as high as number 2 in the nation. And so we know what the fever pitch was just in measuring the feedback here and on your various platforms. And then because of that, even though the 2 losses did not take the team out of contention, it just the disappointment over those 2 losses and the nature of the losses and the inability to fix the offense throughout the year. And now, even though Wisconsin continues to win, there is now a team that's kind of found itself to a certain extent, at least stabilized, won a big game against Minnesota, now enters this weekend with some hope. And maybe that hope should be a little bit higher than it would be from where I'm sitting. Yes, Wisconsin looks like the much better team than Minnesota, the decidedly better team. They are playing on the road. But I think some of that for me is a built-in bias that Wisconsin is just a better football team than Minnesota. And that kind of carries, I carry that from year to year until proven otherwise. And maybe that is clouding my judgment and the actual odds or chances that Minnesota does have to pull off a bit of an upset. They are a touchdown underdog at home, which is fairly substantial.
It is.
To your point, Nebraska played Wisconsin well, and Wisconsin did not close out that game as decidedly as I thought that they would. They weren't as I didn't expect them to be dominant, so that's overstating it. But I did expect them to have more control of that game than they did.
Yeah, and I will say this, going back to just Iowa's start and reflecting, preseason, were there people that were predicting Iowa would win the West? Yeah, but for the most part, it was Wisconsin. And, if you go back, you can watch some of our earlier videos from this channel and from my channel, from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And I made the prediction, Mark, prior to the season starting. And I know this sounds just always a homer making a prediction. No, I said Iowa will win the West in 2021. And I was confident of that. And it may still happen. But, 6 games in, I was feeling pretty good about that prediction because I did feel like some people, even Iowa fans, were kind of counting this team out too early. And I looked everywhere on this roster, and I just didn't see a lot of just these huge holes. I just didn't. And some of the fears, concerns I had were sort of relinquished by the Big Ten Network. One of those being explosive. They used the term explosive offense when they went and visited Iowa. Think about that for a second, Mark. And usually, listen.
I didn't have to think about it for a second. It hit me immediately.
I know, I understand that you got to read between the lines of the Big Ten Network's comments, and that's what I'm trying to do. But that was how I read between the lines. They use the term explosive offense. It seems like we have more explosive players here. Now, I guess reflecting on those statements now, I would look at that and say they were right. They were looking at guys like, I'm assuming they were looking at guys like Arlen Bruce, Keegan Johnson, Tyler Goodson, I think, is still really explosive. But what was odd about that is they really raved about, as I recall, and it may have been Joshua Perry, which I don't think against Joshua Perry, but he's kind of a rookie doing this. So take that for what you. It's kind of like Howard Griffith. Sometimes Howard Griffith just kind of gives you fluff. I mean, I like Howard Griffith, but I'd much rather listen to Jerry DiNardo. But anyways, as it relates to the offensive line, very complimentary of Iowa's offensive line, which surprised me because that was a sort of a concern heading into the year. Was Iowa's O-line, because they had lost Alaric Jackson at left tackle, who was a 4-year guy, Mark Kallenberger, who had played, I thought, very well last year at right tackle. They lost Coy Cronk, the 4-year transfer, really 5-year kid from Indiana who transferred over, who had started like every game for the Hoosiers, comes over here, dealt with injuries and never really settled in at that right tackle spot, but they lose him. It was just sort of an odd it was just sort of an odd turnover. And so that was my concern. But at the same time, I felt good about their guard play with Cody Ince coming back and having another year under him. Justin Britt having another year. Kyler Schott having another year. So guard play has been my biggest disappointment on the inside, because I just, I hear all these excuses, and I know I'm kind of segueing to a different subject completely now, Mark, but I hear all these excuses. I got into a little Twitter, not a debate, but somebody challenged me on a comment that I made just about Iowa not being that youthful up front. Like everybody, oh, they're young guys, just give them time. We just got to be patient. They're not that young. They're really not that young, Mark. They've got young pieces. Tyler Linderbaum is an upperclassman, okay? Cody Ince is I believe Cody's been here I think this is year 4 for Cody. I could be wrong on that, but I believe this is year 4 for Cody. He redshirted the first year, played sparingly in his second year, and I believe this is year 4. And then Britt's a 3+ year guy, and so is Schott. That's a lot of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack Plum is an upperclassman as well. He's been here at least 3 years. So, I mean, yeah, Mason Richmond's a redshirt freshman. Colby's a sophomore. Or, excuse me, Colby is a freshman. DeYoung is a sophomore. But, like, my thing is, everybody keeps talking about how young this team is and this line is. My question becomes, and maybe this is just the critic in me, okay, so we're forced to play all these young guys. Why aren't the older guys ready to take control and seize those positions? So that would be my question. And it's still my question. Now, we've seen some improvement these last couple of weeks, but I guess I go back to the Big Ten Network's comments. I don't know what they were looking at. Like, was the Kyler Schott injury, bailing hay preseason, was that like bigger than we made it out to be? Was the Cody Ince injury bigger than we made it out to be? I just seriously doubt that notion. To me, that's just excuse making. Maybe Richmond and DeYoung sort of plateaued. I guess that's possible for young players. Plum is a guy that's, I know Kirk spoke very highly of him today, but now he's playing left tackle in place of Richmond. He's kind of a guy. It's like, okay, we got to get him. We got to get him going. If he's going to be here playing left tackle, he's old enough to where he needs to be settling in. So those are all kind of weird things that panned out as the season continued, and certainly quarterback was honestly, those are the two biggest concerns. I think if I go back to my preseason predictions, and people can validate this if they want, my biggest concerns were quarterback and line play, specifically those tackles. Although again, guard has been an issue in recent time, and that's kind of been what has been this team's downfall offensively, and that's disappointing. I thought they'd have enough. I thought Petras would be good enough. Again, with a better offensive line, especially what they did last year, winning 6 straight without Petras having to do much because they were so dominant with the run game. But that run game has not been dominant at all. So that's been the difference. And it just is a domino effect with the quarterback position. And so I think the fans may be just a bit burned out because, 6-0, Wisconsin was not playing well early, as you know, Mark. And it's just disappointing that you're here and you're here during rivalry week. And yet Iowa, once again, doesn't control its own destiny and is relying on other people to win it a title. So is it possible? Absolutely. It seems like these games, like the Wisconsin-Minnesota game this week, it seems like these are the types of games that never go Iowa's way. You need something to happen. They just never go Iowa's way. And usually it's because you're relying on Wisconsin to lose, which doesn't happen very often.
Alex Padilla. So this would be 3 games that he's started, correct?
Yeah. No. This. 3 games started, but remember he played the majority of the Northwestern game.
Okay.
He played 3/4 of that game. Yeah. But his 3rd official start.
So is he getting better? How would you evaluate his play?
Well, I talked about it Sunday on our show with Don. Pro Football Focus, I believe. Let me pull those stats up. I think I have those. You know what? Actually, I think I've got them perhaps in my folder here. You mind if I throw these up on the screen, Mark?
Go to it.
So this is what Pro Football Focus says. Padilla, his receivers have a 22% drop rate. It leads the FBS in quarterbacks with over 50 attempts. In fact, it was 40% against Illinois. So Padilla was 6 of 17 against Illinois, which looks terrible. But I remember saying at the end of that game, I'm like, man, it doesn't feel like Padilla's played all that bad. So guys are dropping the ball. And you see Petrus was a 6.6 drop completion for the season, which is much lower. And I know it's a bigger sample size, but a couple thoughts on that. Perhaps we had a caller call in and noted that Petrus seems to throw a cleaner ball and a tighter spiral. Maybe that has something to do with it. But I think for the most part, like Padilla's, that's an excuse too, because I think Padilla's throws have been pretty. He's had a little bit too much smoke behind some of them, as Petrus did at times. But for the most part, he's put the ball on target, and guys have just dropped the ball. Keegan Johnson's dropped more passes than you expect him to than he was earlier in the season. Tracy's had his share of drops. Laporta, Lachey at tight end have had drops. Reganey did not have a great game on Saturday, had some drops. They kept running the same slant play over and over and over again, and continued to miss on it. And then Charlie Jones even had a drop a couple weeks ago, which is odd for him. So I don't know how much you read into this, Mark. Do you have any thoughts on those stats?
My first thought is the compilation of the stats. So I would love to go through play by play and see what Pro Football Focus is considering a drop. But that aside, just to go to the actual percentages. So if a particular team has a 20% drop rate, is that 20% of the passes thrown? Is that 20% of,
I believe it's of what they consider catchable balls that were on target. Okay. But as you probably know, drops are not a quantified measurement in college football. I don't even know if they are in the NFL. So it is sort of up for debate what a drop is. But however they're quantifying this, they're doing so equally between Petrus and Padilla, for whatever that's worth.
So I cannot imagine that they're dropping 20% of the incomplete passes. They are dropping 20% of all the passes thrown, I would think. 20% of the incompletions would be pretty considerable rate.
Well, I guess that would be I'd have to do some more research on Pro Football Focus, but that, again, 22% leads the FBS. So it is high, and that was my first observation from Saturday. Man, these guys are dropping a lot of balls, and nobody's really talking about it. But we're having some issues here. And then the next stat that, if you want to look at this, and maybe you have some comments on this. So if you factor in adjusted completion rate, factoring in those drops on catchable balls or on target balls, 71% for Padilla, slightly over 71% Petrus for the season, 68.8%, which would tell you. And honestly, Padilla's taken more shots, and I think relative to the number of attempts he's had. So that would tell you Padilla's playing better. I think the eye test tells you he's playing better. The eye test also tells you that he can run, and his mobility rolling out of the pocket is big. And that's kind of what we said heading into this quarterback change. That would be the difference. So any thoughts on those numbers, Mark? That certainly would comfort an Iowa fan who's looking at that line from Saturday and thinking, boy, 6 of 17 for, what's the number here? Yeah, 83 yards and a pick.
6 of 17. So depending on what that drop rate percentage relates to, if it's the number of incompletions, so he threw 11 incompletions, I'm guessing roughly 4 of them were dropped out of 11. I can't imagine that out of 17 pass attempts that they dropped 8 passes. That means they would have dropped almost every pass that was incomplete. So I'm guessing that it is a percentage of the incompletions that are dropped.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
That's my guess.
And I said the same thing as a caller. I do feel like Padilla at times kind of has a squirrely throw, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is too, here's where I'll go on the other end and say that really shouldn't matter, is because Keegan Johnson and Arlen Bruce, who have kind of emerged as maybe Iowa's 2 best receivers, although Charlie Jones is right there, as Reganey is as well. But with Bruce and Johnson, both those guys have been working with Padilla since they got here, because they've been on the 2 line, as has Padilla. So they ought to be comfortable working and catching Alex Padilla's passes. So, it is only this will be start number 3, and maybe we'll see a big jump this week, Mark. I guess that's possible. And, the more reps, the better, especially for a young quarterback. And you could argue this is his first road game. I mean, he played at Northwestern, but first of all, he didn't start. And as you know, the biggest resistance he had from a crowd perspective in that Northwestern game was when you have these protesters running out in the field with big banners. And by the way, did you see that, Mark? Did you see the social media video afterwards of an Iowa fan jumping out of the stands, running down onto the field, and running through these big signs?
I did see that.
And then he runs off the field, and nobody stops him. I mean, there's like no security at Ryan Field. I've never seen anything like that. Anyways,
yeah,
I digress. But no, it is the first road start for Padilla.
Yeah. You had mentioned that incident. I didn't know anything about it. Then I went back and I wanted to see it, and that included the Iowa fan coming out from the stands. Before we bring Greg on, one last note on Padilla. This is what comes to mind from me, and I will liken it in a sense to the CJ Stroud emergence as the Ohio State starting quarterback this year, because they had quite the competition for that job. That obviously there's a lot of trust placed in the expertise of the coaching staff to select the right guy. And then when you see later in the season somebody else emerge, or the backup being given the opportunity and he plays better. Now, in this case, I don't think it's decidedly better, overwhelmingly better, but it seems to be a reasonable thought that he is performing better, that there's a lot of things that could be happening here in regards to just, you can evaluate these guys all you want in practice, and sometimes guys just perform better in the games and other guys don't perform as well in the games. Other guys, maybe a light went on, just better development throughout the season, even in practice, all sorts of things could have happened. But considering, and we know we could make the checklist items of what we're looking for in a quarterback, the arm strength, the arm talent, all the tangibles we could run through, and then the intangibles, the leadership and so forth, the communication skills on the field, all of that, the poise, the toughness, all of that. We know that Padilla checks the box in regards to mobility over Petrus. And we know that Petrus was decent last year. It just raises some questions for me, as just wondering how close the competition was in August and how good the evaluation was at that time.
Well, I've questioned Iowa's ability to evaluate quarterbacks because, there was never really, and we haven't really talked about this, but I almost wonder if part of the Petrus not really ever being in doubt as being Iowa's starting quarterback was the fact that Ferentz really anointed him the January after Stanley left, which was very odd for him to do. Typically he waits until fall, and he's kind of rode with him throughout. And you wonder if maybe, you're slightly embarrassed if the guy that you put more faith in maybe than any other quarterback during your head coaching tenure is a guy that just frankly needs to be benched. And I was going to mention, you brought up practice players that perform better during the game. Chuck Hartley, another number 8 quarterback for Iowa, was a perfect example. Wasn't a great practice player, but certainly showed up on game day. And I don't know, maybe the Stanzi situation was similar. I don't remember, Jake Christensen was a really highly touted, recruited kid. So, I don't know how much that rode into it. Certainly he was better in game than Jake was.
Iowa, Nebraska, of course, the annual clash on a Friday after Thanksgiving. We got Greg Peterson joining us from Husker Online. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Been a long time.
Yeah, really. Don't recognize you guys.
So Greg's wearing the black for black and gold. I'm wearing the red for the GBR fans. So we're all set, Mark. And you're wearing a neutral, navy blue, Mark? Is that what you're?
No, I am wearing black. But I've got probably like 27 different black shirts in my closet and drawers. So this is pretty much what I wear about 3/4 of the time. Anyway, so there's no rooting interest here, folks. It's just a lot of black in my closet.
Neutral.
Yes.
So, Greg, anything new from Husker Nation over the past 24 hours? We were just talking about Kirk's comments today just regarding some injuries and did comment on the lack of tape for Smothers. Anything new over the past 24 hours?
I gotta believe that he was joking that he said he went back to junior high. There's plenty of film there from his high school career from
I was
muscles.
going to say, he was asked about huddle, and he basically, I like this about Kirk. He doesn't pretend to be up with the times because he basically said, well, we got some young guys that take care of finding, I don't know how they do it, but they take care of finding that tape. So, I don't know about the junior high tape, but certainly they'll have as much as they can find. But, he kind of just generalized it too by saying, look, he's a Nebraska quarterback. He's going to fit into the system. And it sounds like from what we heard from you, Greg, that he does kind of fit that Adrian Martinez mold.
Well, he knows the system. He knows how to run the system. That's for sure. So, I mean, you're not going to see any kind of a lack of knowing the system and knowing the playbook whatsoever. I mean, he's been for 2 years and he knows it inside and out because he's a smart guy. We mentioned yesterday that, his dad's a coach and, generally coaches' sons are usually pretty smart football players, that I've come to see over my career. So and he's not a baby faced kid that's going to come in and be scared or shocked or anything. He's played in 5 games this year, so it's not like he doesn't know what he's doing. So obviously there'll be a little bit of drop off. Adrian Martinez is the starter for a reason, but everybody's got confidence in Logan. So we'll see how it goes. I think we kind of talked a little bit yesterday. I just kind of expect it to be a little bit more of a grinded out running game all the way around, just with the problems with both offenses right now.
Nebraska, you're going to be able to run the ball against Iowa?
They're going to try.
What's weird about it, Greg, is Minnesota ran the ball very well. Of course, Minnesota, that's their
knows how to run the ball.
Yeah, they know how to run the ball, but Illinois does too, and Illinois really didn't run the ball well against Iowa. So, maybe that's credit to Iowa's lines on both sides, kind of progressing as the weeks come along. Kirk alluded that today that he's starting to see a jump, especially with the Iowa O line. But Illinois usually has an explosive run or two each week, and they really weren't able to get anything going on Saturday.
Yeah, on the flip side with Nebraska too, I think it was encouraging to see that they ran the ball okay against Wisconsin. It wasn't like they couldn't run against Wisconsin. So I think that that makes us feel a little bit more confident going into Friday's game. And we talked about the running back situation being pretty banged up right now, and we'll find out a little bit more about Ramir Johnson tomorrow when Coach Frost talks to us at about noon tomorrow. Because right now he's basically on a day-to-day basis, and we'll see if Ramir can make it back in. But if not, Nebraska's going to roll with their 3 scholarship guys, Marvin Scott and a little mix of Brody Belt in there and Marquise Stepp. And, Jacques Yant should be ready to go as well. So, Nebraska's going to spread it around a little bit in the backfield. And, I think you're going to see a lot of different guys touching the ball on Friday against that Hawkeye defense.
Does Scott Frost meet with you guys multiple times a week?
Yeah. Yep. Twice a week. Mondays and Thursdays usually, but obviously on a short week, that moved up to Wednesday. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
You guys I've never heard of that. Have you heard of that before, Mark?
I have not heard of that. And,
That's impressive.
Not that I'm some cagey veteran when it comes to this. I've been around a long time, but it was only 7 years that I was on the beat of going to weekly news conferences. But between Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama, which I attended every week for 7 years, 1 per week, and I just thought that was standard. Yeah.
What's the percentage chance, Greg, that Scott Frost comes out tomorrow and says, Adrian's trying to go Friday? We'll see.
I don't know. I saw Adrian today. Adrian was watching one of the Class C1 final was out there, and everybody was flocked around him. He had a little harem around him. And
did you say today?
Yeah, today he was out. He was watching the high school state finals game.
There was a state final game on a Tuesday?
Yeah, that's the way Nebraska. See, Nebraska's kind of weird. Okay, the head coach speaks twice, and that goes all the way back to Tom Osborne. Okay, so
okay, all right.
Every head coach talks twice a week, and the state final games are played on Monday and Tuesday. So the lesser classes are played on Monday, and then Tuesday is actually Class C, and then Class A final is on Tuesday evening. So yeah, yep. And some of that has to do with Nebraska's always played a Black Friday game. Going back to Colorado, Oklahoma, and so the high school season wraps up. They go an extra week, basically. The teams all get a week off before they play their final game, and they do that on the Monday and Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
I got to say, I'm not trying to endear myself to all the Nebraska and Iowa people that are watching right now. This is just the way it is. But ever since this game was put together by the Big Ten on Friday, and I'm a guy that watches as much college football as I can possibly get a hold of, my Friday revolves around this game, and all my other viewing revolves around this game. I have always just considered this, and some people will just tag me as a Big Ten guy, just the game I want to see more than any other game. And that includes, a lot of years, Arkansas, LSU playing very meaningful games in the SEC and elsewhere across the country. Usually Washington State has been a Friday game, Arizona State, and a lot of other really good rivalries. But I kind of set this one down, and then whatever I can make around it. But Nebraska, Iowa has been my game on Friday. Absolutely.
So, Mark, is any of your equipment, are they Black Friday purchases?
Yeah.
None of my equipment. Why? No.
No, I just didn't know if you're a Black Friday shopper.
I never touched Black Friday for the longest time. And then I would say maybe about 10 years, certain relationships cause you to do certain things. So yeah, I hit it out on Black Friday a few times.
So are there more games now on Black Friday than there were? I mean,
oh my goodness. Yes.
Because I don't even remember this. I mean, 5-6 years ago, Iowa State, I don't remember Iowa State playing on Black Friday, and they're playing on Black Friday this year.
Yeah,
so
there's a ton of them. There used to be like 3.
Yeah.
There's
the Egg Bowl, Nebraska's game, the Egg Bowl, and Washington State.
Well, the Egg Bowl, actually, I've got close ties to the Egg Bowl because I was down covering Ole Miss and Mississippi State, and I was actually covering that game. It used to be played Saturday, just like everybody else, and they switched it Thanksgiving. And I think this was quite the genius of somebody, and I forget whom, decided, hey, we can be the only college football game played on Thanksgiving night. And they moved it. And this was when I was down there, like 1998. It was actually Tommy Tuberville's last game at Ole Miss, and when he skirted off to Auburn overnight. We made a big deal about doing a full pregame, postgame show and the whole deal on Thanksgiving, and they've kept it ever since. So they get things started on Thanksgiving night, and then all these other Friday games.
I get real tired. This is kind of going off on a tangent, Mark. I get real tired of some of the people in the Iowa media will go unnamed that just rant and complain about how the Iowa's being scheduled for Friday games, not Black Friday, but like the Maryland game.
Yeah.
Oh, Fridays are for high school football. Look, it's you say it's about money, and it is, but it's a spotlight for those games. That Maryland-Iowa game, I believe, had some of the highest ratings of any game on Fox Sports that this whole year. So
you're not competing against any other college football game.
Yeah, and it's 1 week for a fan base. Typically, I know Minnesota's kind of drew the short straw on that. I don't know if it was this year or last year, they had a couple Friday games, maybe 3 actually. But I have no problem with it. Like once in a while, what's the big deal? And certainly there's no, Iowa state championships are over, so there's no Black Friday high school games anyways. So I have no problem with it. And I know this game didn't it go away for a year, right? It went away for 2 years, but last year it ended up falling on Black Friday, correct? And then there were a few more weeks after. I look back at the schedule, last year seems like 8 years ago. But Iowa, I was thinking back in my mind, I'm thinking this was the last game last year, but no, it just happened to fall on Black Friday, and then they played like 3 more games after that. So it's sort of odd, but now we've got and I personally like the Nebraska game being the last game because at least for the past 5 or 6 years, that game has been maybe the biggest game in the Big Ten West. But I like the tradition of the Nebraska-Iowa rivalry, and now that it's locked in, I think it's it's good for both fan bases, honestly.
And what I think it's starting to become more of a rivalry to the players than it had been. Just by hearing some of the Nebraska coaches and players talk this week, that they throughout the year they always harp on it's a nameless, faceless opponent, every week. But they all admit that there's a little extra juice in the building when it's Iowa week. So, a lot of fans might try to say it's not a rivalry, but I think it is turning into a rivalry. And, if Nebraska can start putting a couple in the win column, it'd make it even that much better of a rivalry.
Yeah, listen, Mark, Nebraska fans will be incessant if they win this game this year. And it won't matter if you end up and that's a compliment. And that's a compliment to Nebraska fans. We talked about their passion yesterday. It won't matter. I mean, that'll make them, 4-8?
Yeah, record's meaningless at this point. So what? Yeah, you don't have anything to lose, and how about bringing that trophy home for the first time since 2014? So
and ruining Iowa's chances at the West before Wisconsin even plays.
Exactly.
Now, this is Iowa Live, Mark. Let me bring this up. So Don Patterson said to me Sunday, he said, Corey, the good news about the game on the Minnesota-Wisconsin game being played on Saturday is if Iowa wins Friday, that puts more pressure on Wisconsin. Here's the flip side. And this is what I said back to him. I said, well, Don, the other problem with that is Iowa beats Nebraska on Friday. Minnesota is eliminated. So now they have less motivation to beat Minnesota or to beat Wisconsin. So that's what I don't like about the game being on Friday. That's why I'd rather those two games fall on the same day. Can't do anything about it.
No.
But like Don said, you're what's the old phrase? You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So I don't know. Any thoughts on on that little scenario? Because again, it's either you lose and you're eliminated Friday, or you lose and now Minnesota has less motivation to win. Although I would have to think Minnesota's got motivation either way, given the fact that it's a rivalry game and they're still competing for bowl positioning and they can keep. I would think Minnesota would rather Iowa go. I mean, Minnesota's rivals with Iowa and Wisconsin, but man, I think that Wisconsin-Minnesota rivalry in 2021 is a more heated rivalry than Iowa-Minnesota. Minnesota's probably got more history there. But I don't know. That's sort of an interesting storyline.
Yeah, it is. Into it.
I would think that motivation would be more of a question for a team or a program that was used to going to conference championships repeatedly, where Minnesota, that game in and of itself against Wisconsin is enormous for them. Sure, there's going to be disappointment there.
Yeah, and I think they're probably preparing this week. I mean, I don't know what the latest line is, but I think, especially with Adrian's news, Minnesota's probably preparing this week like Iowa's likely going to win. I mean, you don't prepare that way either way, but I don't think it'll be like a shock if Iowa beats Nebraska on Friday. It won't be a shock to the Gopher players. And Gophers also need Purdue to win. So they know it's a long shot at this point, but it is sort of an interesting conversation. And again, I just, that Minnesota-Wisconsin rivalry, I looked back at the series because, you forget year to year, and you don't, Mark, because you remember every score for FBS teams in the past 30 years, it seems like. But I looked back, and man, that rivalry has been very one-sided.
Sure.
From score-wise. And that's why I was as an Iowa guy, putting so much faith on Nebraska winning that game last week, because Nebraska has had Wisconsin's number more than anybody else has. They haven't really beaten Wisconsin as of late, but they play Wisconsin close. They put up tons of yards on Wisconsin. They've obviously Frost has figured out that defense. So that was the disappointment, because to me, I thought there was a better chance that Iowa or that Nebraska would beat Wisconsin than I do Minnesota would beat Wisconsin.
So while we're on the subject of the various scenarios, I'm going to give the standings. Corey, you will probably do a better job than I will of explaining the scenarios and what needs to happen for each team. But right now we've got Wisconsin and Iowa at 6-2, Minnesota and Purdue at 5-3 in the conference.
Right. So I'm going to repeat what the Big Ten Network explained a few days ago, because I think I understand it, but I'll just give you the facts. So Wisconsin wins. They're obviously representing the West. If Iowa wins, Wisconsin loses, which includes a Minnesota win. Iowa represents the West. For Minnesota to win, or for Minnesota to get to the championship game, they would need Iowa to lose, they would need to beat Wisconsin, and they would need Purdue to win. So if you think about that, then they'd be in a, what would that be, a 4-way tie? And then I don't know what the 4-way tiebreaker is, if it's record against common opponents there or against the division as a whole.
Common opponents, then it's division.
So apparently they would get in by that. Again, I'd have to go back and look at why that is and their records.
I figured out all this a couple weeks back.
Yeah, you did.
And that's what it was.
Too much time on your hands.
So yes, but it's possible. Purdue's out of it. So who does Purdue play this week, Mark?
Indiana, the old Oaken bucket.
So they'll beat Indiana if
Yeah,
they lose to Indiana.
Yeah.
If they lose to Indiana, yikes. So Minnesota's got to be looking at that and saying, okay, Purdue's probably going to win. There's certainly a chance that Nebraska would win, and then they control their own destiny if that happens. So Minnesota's not looking at this saying, well, we're done. There's a good chance that all these things happen. Now, here's the other thing, Mark. You want to pull out your calculator here for a second. If you look at, and I don't know what ESPN's FPI has for these games this weekend, but if you look at like just what I would predict Iowa's chances of beating Nebraska on Friday, before the Adrian news, I would have said like 55% chance of beating Nebraska. I'm just throwing that number out there. I maybe moved that closer to like 65% now. But say you're 65%, you have a 65% chance of winning that game. And then what would you give Minnesota as far as a chance of beating Wisconsin? I'd say like 30.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. 30, 35. They're at home. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to know chances, then if we're assuming those two numbers are somewhat accurate, then Iowa has a 19.5% chance of winning the West, which isn't very much.
Do you know what the FPI was giving the Iowa-Nebraska odds at before the Adrian Martinez news?
I'm sure it was Nebraska.
They were 55? At 58% Nebraska.
So I wonder where that's moved now. I guess I could look that up. I am curious.
I'm a big critic of the FPI anyway, so I don't think it's valid.
It hasn't moved. I don't know how that works, but it hasn't. It's at 58% still.
Probably haven't updated it.
They probably haven't updated it. But if that's the case, so say you're still looking at 58%, then you're looking at, 42%. And let's just take a look at what ESPN has for the Minnesota game.
Oh, let me guess. Well, Minnesota's at home. I'm going to say Wisconsin's 68%.
They've got Wisconsin 62. So they're giving Minnesota 38%. So 42% times 38%, you're looking at pretty close to what we said earlier, about 16% chance. So Iowa, according to my estimations and ESPN, Iowa has about a 16% chance, 16 to 19% chance of winning the division, which isn't very high, let's be honest. But it's also very, very possible. I mean, it could very, very possibly happen. Sure.
On the surface, I got to think people find it interesting that a 9-2 team is a pick'em game against a 3-8 team, but that's the story of these two seasons to a certain extent. Iowa's been opportunistic. Nebraska's been whatever you want to call it, snake bitten.
Well, that's why I couldn't understand in the first place why Iowa was a 4-point underdog, even with Adrian. Like, was I feeling great about the game? No, but Nebraska's not been able to win any close games, and Iowa's won. I mean, Iowa hasn't won, maybe we make too much of it. They haven't won a ton of close games. Like they've won a few close games here the last few weeks, but like during their stretch earlier, they were pretty much dominating opponents besides like the Penn State game where they came from behind for the most part. I mean, Indiana, they ran away with early. Iowa State was a 17-point game late. Maryland was they took them to the woodshed. So, but Iowa has certainly been more reliable. And I could see making it a close line, but to give Nebraska the nod there just was a little bit surprising. And again, that's moved. I see our Irish fan, and I do want to, if I could, I did see a comment earlier from our Irish gentleman. He asked a good question about Xavier Wampa, who just won a state title with Southeast Polk here in Iowa. And of course he's down to Iowa, Notre Dame and Ohio State. And I would say the same thing I did. I don't have any inside information on where he's going. I think he's supposed to make his announcement here in the coming weeks. We should know by early to mid-December, it sounds like. I think I predicted Iowa, but it would be between Iowa and Ohio State. I hate to break that to him, and I could be wrong. Maybe he'll pick the Irish, but I've only heard Iowa and Ohio State, but he's got a top 3, so we should know here soon. He's one of the higher. I mean, I don't know the last time Iowa's had a chance at a kid this high in state. They've lost some. The Pierschbacher kid comes to mind that ended up going down to Alabama. They've lost some really good recruits. Oliver Martin being another one that ended up going to Michigan initially. So they've got an opportunity to grab an in-state kid who is coveted by everybody. So we'll see what happens in, again, early December.
Thomas Fedoni.
Yeah, absolutely.
Iowa, Nebraska. We are only 3 days away, minus a few hours. We got Greg Peterson joining us. This is a treat. Joins us from Husker Online. So we've got a Nebraska show each and every week with Greg, but he's going to check in here tonight, as Corey did last night on our Nebraska show, to size up the matchup. Man, Greg, to think that when a program does not reach a bowl game, that off season, it seems like it gets extended 3 months. It's only roughly a month, but it seems like it's just an eternity that this Nebraska football team is going to play in 3 days. A few days before December, still late November, and we're not going to see this team on the field until September next year. The college football off season is just brutal.
Yeah, it's been so long now. It's hard to even remember. I mean, we were actually, a few of us were kind of talking and reminiscing about the Music City Bowl. And I was like, that was the last bowl game that we were at. And that's so long ago now. And kind of funny that, I ran into the airport in Omaha. I ran into Noah Fant, former Iowa Hawkeye tight end who plays for the Broncos. And you guys were just on your way back from your Sunny Bowl game down in Orlando, and so I chatted with Noah there, and that's the last time that we've been to a bowl game, and it is just, I mean, I remember I told my wife that first year we missed out a bowl game, I said, don't get used to me being around for Christmas. This is only a one-time thing here, and now it's turned into a tradition, it seems like. So, yeah, it's really hard to you miss the whole month of your football season, basically, that you plan on having when the season starts. So, yeah, it's really, it wears on you. And I mean, my goodness, there's not a player on the Nebraska team anymore that has played in a bowl game. So, yeah, it's a very, very bizarre and just a hard feeling to get over. It really is.
What's side of this matchup have we yet to get to here? I don't know that we've got anything in the live chat concerning what's on everyone's minds.
I keep seeing people asking when Dan Mullen is coming to be OC at Iowa. I don't know where. I'm not sure. Is there a connection there that I'm missing? Mark, do you know a connection between Dan Mullen and Iowa?
I don't think there's any such connection. But Dan Mullen is one of the best in the business, and Iowa could use a jump start.
Well,
another team that's looking for an offensive coordinator.
I will say somebody offered Brian Ferentz in the chat to Nebraska.
Yeah, I think we'll pass on that one.
Oh, there you go, Mark. Somebody from outside the realm here who is not endorsing Brian Ferentz. I will say this, and I know that this is we're talking Nebraska and Iowa today, but I was, for some reason, I was looking back at somebody commented on an old video that we did here for the Iowa channel, Mark, and a couple of the comments we did, you remember, probably back in the fall, Mark, I know you do a million of these shows, but we talked about who would be a good replacement for Kirk when he steps down. And some people were like super just offended that we would even talk about it prior to his retirement. It was just almost like slander. But it's just funny. I looked back at some of the comments, and this is amazing. I need people to realize, and I have nothing personally against Brian Ferentz, and I've been very outspoken that I just don't think he is qualified. His resume just absolutely does not qualify him to be a head coach at this level. Just absolutely does not. Okay. However, I'm going to read you a couple of these comments. These are Iowa fans, I'm assuming. When asked the question, who does Iowa replace Kirk with? And I won't say who it is that commented this, but here's one of our comments. Brian Ferentz, period. It's our best angle for growing fan base, loyalty, and longevity. What a great story to tell. Come on, man. What are we doing here?
You sure that's an Iowa fan?
It might be. It might be some sarcasm there, Greg. I almost hope it is, because, look, again, I've been very outspoken on that, and I have nothing against Brian. I want him to succeed. You want him to succeed here at Iowa. And let me find the other comment here, because I know I had a conversation with Don. I think the other comment was on our conversation with Don Patterson. You can talk amongst yourselves, Mark, while I find this. I think you'll find this interesting.
Greg, this is an angle we should be taking that I rarely think about, is going through all the comments that come to the channel in response to, we obviously take them live, but to review the comments that come into the videos after we're done.
Yeah.
I'm sure quite amusing.
Yeah, I never thought to do that.
Okay, so we talked about, I'll find it here. It was a video that it was a video about Bob Stoops, right? And I know some people were like, yeah, here it is. Some people were obviously all in on Bob Stoops. I'm all in on Bob Stoops. Bob Stoops, I think if Kirk retired in February, I think Iowa could land Bob Stoops. I don't have any inside information on that, but I think they could land Bob Stoops. Now, he may not be on the market in 3 years, but I think they'd have a chance. Okay, I'm pretty confident this is an Iowa fan who commented this, and I'm not trying to make fun of him. You have the right to say whatever you want, but here's what he says. Hire Brian! ! If you did not know his name, how about this candidate's resume? Passionate, intelligent, candid, played at Iowa, starter at a key position, spent 5 years with the Patriots, position coach of O-line, run game coordinator, offensive coordinator, equals qualified resume. I mean, again, you have your right to your own opinion, but come on. Are we really going to go down the route of, and there's other reasons why you might want Brian. Maybe you're just latched onto the Hayden Fry era and the Kirk Ferentz mold. I mean, Bob Stoops is also from that era, but regardless, you could argue that Brian is OC because of his last name, and not saying he's not a qualified coach somewhere, but he obviously had some connections to Bill Belichick at New England. And so, he just like Brett Bielema did. And that's why both those guys have coached with the Patriots. And anyways, I'm not trying to rip Brian or rip any of the fans that want him as the offensive coordinator. Or the head coach. I'm just surprised. And maybe that's changed throughout these months this season, where people have kind of woken up. Oh yeah, this is what this offense is. And that was preseason. But I'm just surprised at the number of people that I've read on social media that are actually pro Brian Ferentz for head coach. That's just shocked me, to be honest.
Well, I have lost track of the time, and we have hit the end of the line. We appreciate everybody joining us for the last hour for Iowa Hawkeyes live right here at the Voice of College Football. And for those watching on the simulcast on the Nebraska channel, thanks for joining us, and enjoy the game, everyone. And we would encourage everyone to subscribe to any of the channels, of course, that you're interested in, but certainly the Iowa channel needs your help in regards to just helping us grow the platform. It's the closest to the 1,000 mark in subscribers, so please head on over to the Iowa channel and subscribe. Check out Corey's work at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. That's From the Hawkeye of the Storm right here on YouTube and on your favorite audio platform. And you can check out Greg's work on HuskerOnline.com, but also right here on YouTube, Husker Online video for Nebraska news conferences, basketball, football, It's all there.
Greg, let's talk during basketball season prior
Sure.
to the Nebraska-Iowa matchup. And let me just put a plug in real quick if I could, Mark.
Sure.
Friday's going to be a busy day for us. So we've got, obviously, Iowa-Nebraska at 12:30 for us Iowa fans. Post-game with Don Patterson at the Iowa channel about 4 p.m. Central Time, assuming the game's over. The extended Fox Sports commercials, assuming the game's over at 4 o'clock. And then at 6 p.m. Central Time, we'll have Iowa Portland State basketball, and then our post-game show at 8 o'clock with Coach Close over at the From the Hawkeye of the Storm channel. So it's a full day, and of course you can get all those shows on record over at From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. So been a pleasure, nice. Greg. Good to meet you, and great
Absolutely.
to talk Big Red and Hawkeye football this week.
Yeah, same here. We'll definitely keep this up. Definitely.
I will see everybody in just about 25 minutes over on the main channel as we watch the college football playoff rankings come down and take your calls. All right, Greg, Corey, guys, have a nice Thanksgiving, and we will see you soon.
Have a great night.
Yep, same to you. Thank you.